Alright, so here's this week's weekly Witch Queen campaign. It's the Arrival, which is the first mission of the Witch Queen campaign. I'm doing this on Master difficulty, and this is a solo flawless run. As you can tell, Togetherness is the weekly modifier. Just like the Nightfalls, they share the same modifiers, which means you have no way to recover your health efficiently without other means. Which also means that if you're not playing like a Warlock, for example, where you need recovery to get your Rift back, you can actually forego your recovery stats entirely because it's not going to help you. Even if you got 100 recovery on a Hunter or Titan, you're not going to recover your health. Like you have to wait like a minute, which doesn't sound like long, but in the moment it feels like forever, and it's pretty much useless. So that's why I decided to just go with a Warlock again, as I did for Exodus Crash, because having a Rift is just a easy way. It basically negates Togetherness entirely, as long as you have a decent cooldown on your Rift. And as you may have seen, I've got tier 8 recovery, which isn't bad, but one of my fragments that I'm running, I can't recall what the name is, but when you scorch targets, you get class ability energy back. On top of that, I'm also using the other fragment where when you scorch targets, you get melee energy back, and that also gives you a plus 10 to recovery. So I'm buffing my stats to reduce my Rift cooldown, and also my melee, which I'm using Celestial Fire. And the reason I wanted pretty good stats for my melee, I'm tier 8 on recovery, tier 8 discipline, tier 8 strength, tier 10 resilience, because resilience is OP. I mean, 40% damage resistance on tier 10 is pretty substantial, and I think like tier 9 is 32%, so it's a pretty big jump. So you're just better off going tier 10. Now, I find with Warlock, if you're using Bomber on your class item for your mods, that you don't need tier 10 discipline. Like, for example, if you have tier 10 discipline and tier 6 recovery, you're actually going to get your grenades back slower than if you just went tier 8 discipline with tier 8 recovery, because every time you drop a Rift, you get a bunch of grenade energy. So it sounds counterintuitive, but you want your recovery and your class item to come back faster so that you can get your grenade back faster. So yeah, while it looks nice on paper to have, double 100 stats or triple 100s or quads, whatever, it's not always doesn't always make sense. It just looks good. But tier 8 recovery, tier 8 discipline is pretty much a perfect balance if you're running double Bomber. It's faster than tier 10 discipline and tier 6 recovery. Now, the reason I'm running tier 8 on strength is because I'm using my charged melee to stun unstoppables. I don't have an unstoppable mod for any weapon. Reason being, I wanted to use Witherhoard, which ruled out any other exotic with intrinsic anti-champion mods. So, and I'm using my scout for barriers. So as long as I have some decent cooldown on my charged melee, and if I plan it correctly, I'll be able to stun the unstoppables as much as I need. But it's still not as practical, obviously, as having like unstoppable on your pulse rifle or your shotgun, because you can stun the champion over and over again. With your charged melee, you are relying on your cooldown, and while while I am saying that my cooldown is decent with tier 8 strength and my fragment that gives me melee energy back from scorching targets, it's still not as practical as just using a weapon. So you do have to plan your stun. Make sure your weapons are reloaded first, and then I go for the stun, the fusion grenade, the Witherhoard, swap over to Cataclysmic for a couple of shots. So that's basically how I'm dealing with it. I do like Witherhoard a lot on Solar Warlock, especially with the Starfire Protocol build, because when you do drop your Well of Radiance, as long as you're doing damage, you're getting your fusion grenades back, like one after the other. This is very similar to what I run in raids. So you drop your well, get a Witherhoard off, and while your Witherhoard is doing tick damage, your grenade energy is being replenished super fast. And of course you can use Empowering Rift too to also use the fusion nade spam. But with Togetherness, that's not practical. I need the Healing Rift. Also, I'm producing, this isn't a charged with light build, I'm just, it's more of a well build. So I'm producing solar wells from Elemental Ordnance, because I have a lot of fusion grenades, and Explosive Well Maker. So Witherhoard, if I get 2-3 enemies with a Witherhoard shot, that's gonna drop a solar well as well. Also, I do believe that grenades, like if I wasn't running Elemental Ordnance and I got a multi-kill with my grenade, it would count as an Explosive Well Maker and give me a solar well that way too. So, and then I'm running Seeking Wells, so the wells come to me. Well of Life, so I get extra healing. So whenever I'm outside of my rift, if I'm picking up wells, I'm healing. So just an additional way to counteract Togetherness, which I do find is probably the hardest, at least as far as solos. Togetherness is the hardest modifier to play on. Like, there's certain aspects of Grandmasters on Nightfalls that are easier than doing solo master Togetherness, unless you're planned out for it, like I am here. But attrition is similar because you don't get health recovery either. But when you kill enemies, they drop a Well of Life, which is like a white elemental well that you go pick up, and that heals you. But Togetherness, it's basically saying unless you have teammates nearby, you're not going to recover your health. And so there you go. If you're playing solo, you're on your own to figure something out. So as far as the weapons I'm using, other than Witherhoard, of course, I wasn't too fussed about using masterworked weapons with the exact perks I wanted. I'm already comfortable doing these weekly Witch Queen missions. I've done them. This is the second arrival I've done solo flawless. The last one was on Legend, but I was closer to Legend power back then. Now I'm at power level for Master, so it should be the same difficulty as Legend. The only difference being that there's a few more champions. But yeah, so I wanted to just level up my weapons, and so Tarnished Metal, which is the Season 18 scout rifle that you get from doing seasonal activities. It's a really good scout rifle, and the cool thing about it is when you craft it, you don't get garbage perks on it that you got to deal with for forever until you level the thing up and get what you want on it. You can get right off the bat, you can get Explosive Head and Shoot to Loot. which is something I would consider just putting on my finished version of this weapon. Of course, they're not enhanced perks, but still very good. Like explosive head in any higher end content, master, raids, grandmasters, explosive head is top notch because there's no range fall off to the explosive damage. Whereas like if you're using something cool like Volt Shot or Incandescent, while those are great to use in lower end content and just kind of on trash mobs in general that are underpowered, it's not as practical on when you're trying to do stuff without dying like I am here, or on Grandmasters, because then you're just dealing with range drop off. You're doing damage from range, and you do less damage the further away you are. And while that is the case with this tarnished metal I'm using, because I have explosive head on it, it has like you get your weapon damage from your projectile, but then on top of that you get an explosive payload damage, and there's no range drop off to that explosive damage. So really good scout rifle, and you do level up, like especially when I'm trying to do these solo flawless runs. Like yeah, I end up doing a few takes usually, so there's some fails in there, but while I'm failing at doing these missions, I'm actually leveling up these weapons, and then when I do complete it, you get a nice chunk of level progression on completion as well, and more so I believe when doing higher difficulty content. So if you were to like run just a Vanguard Ops strike, you would get a certain amount of level progression on your weapon for completing the strike, but you get more on like a master difficulty Nightfall or master difficulty weekly Witch Queen campaign, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that is the case. I should test it just to be sure, but either way, I'm leveling them up, getting kills, completing the mission, and then same goes for Cataclysmic. When I started playing this game, I didn't do any raids for a long time. It took me a while to kind of figure out LFG, and that it's hard when you haven't done a raid and everybody else has already done it. People post like, you got to be social enough to get on mic and talk with people, coordinate. You don't know who you're dealing with. Sometimes you get some toxic people that just have negative attitudes, which isn't very fun. And people are often looking for other players that already have experience. Like the majority of postings in LFG groups know what to do. Like we don't want you to join unless you know what to do. Like 1 out of 10 postings are willing to teach or just chill. Maybe it's not that dramatic, but the majority of them want you to know what to do. So it's kind of hard to like drop into a raid after everybody's already figured it out and then learn it that way. But I did it slowly but surely with Vow the Disciple, and there's I probably have like 10-20 clears on the raid, and I've done the Rolk checkpoint dozens of times, but there's still a lot that I don't know about it. Either way, where I was going with that is that's why I haven't used Vow the Disciple weapons. I just didn't have very many, and I just crafted Cataclysmic. The Glaive Lublaze Ruin, I got lucky with that one. I was able to craft that a little while ago, but I still haven't leveled it up. No enhanced perks. And I just got Cataclysmic, my 5th red border last week from doing a Rolk checkpoint. I definitely want to be leveling it up because you can get bait and switch and 4 times a charm, and it's one of the best DPS linear fusion options out there. So I'm just using a basic version of it, and it does the job just fine in, you know, in this mission. Not to mention I got plenty of damage options with Fusion Nade spam, Witherhoard. I can proc Radiant when I need it, which, you know, when you use a charged melee, if you have the fragment that gives you Radiant, as soon as you hit somebody with a charged melee, you get about 10 seconds of 25% weapon damage bonus, which is essentially like Font of Might. And you can stack Font of Might with Radiant, by the way. But I don't, unless I'm like constantly producing wells and picking them up, I don't usually run Font of Might, just because the timer, you know, it's on a timer, so most of the time your timer runs out before you can really plan to do your extra damage. So I just used, I was using Ashes to Assets on my headpiece to get my super back, and Font of Might, or Font of Wisdom instead of Font of Might. So every time I pick up a solar well, I get 30 seconds or so of tier 10 intellect, which is a long timer, and it's definitely not hard to be to keep that uptime going as long as you're in the fight and picking up wells. You know, most of the time you got tier 10 intellect. Not to mention all my grenade kills also boosting super energy, so I was able to get quite a few wells going, and I didn't even use as many as I needed to. I had supers to spare, basically. But Cataclysmic was I mainly just used it to dish out damage on the Unstoppables for one. That was main priority, because I knew that I only had that single stun capability. I was compelled to one phase the Unstoppables. Otherwise, you got to turn around, run, wait for your cooldown, so that you can re-stun. So yeah, so with the Unstoppables, the trick is to stun, nade, Witherhoard. If you got another nade, use it. But switch to Cataclysmic, shoot his backpack a couple times, and then he'll be finishable or dead. So it was really good for that. Yeah, this is a pretty fun mission. I do like all the missions with Cabal in them. I just like the Cabal enemy types. Probably that and Hive are my favorite in the game. And this mission throws you straight into some Cabal stuff, and then you're up against the Lucent Hive. And this is our first introduction to the moths, which, as you know, whenever you see an enemy that's kind of glowing blue and it looks like they have a little overshield, so as soon as you shoot them, that overshield goes away and a moth separates itself from the enemy, and then you can shoot the moth and it'll deal collateral damage. And if you don't shoot the moth and there's no other enemies for the moth to attach itself to, it'll come after you and explode in your face. And if you get like a couple moths doing that, you're dead. So it is something to be mindful of. So with all these Witch Queen campaign missions, of course you get rally banners every now and then. So you can be pretty liberal with your heavy ammo and your super. So that's why I just dropped my super on the banner, picked up the banner, got another super right away, and did some damage from back there. Now you're going to have 5 priority targets that you need to get rid of. And they're going to drop these tributes, which are like triangular white glowing motes. You pick those up, bring them back to the plate, one after the other. So the first one was a barrier. I think there's 3 barriers total, and then the other ones that drop them are wizards. Pretty easy. They have solar shields, and they do blast you with arc damage, so they're pretty deadly, but you know, they're fairly easy to kill, so not a big deal. And these motes are on a timer, by the way, so if you don't get the motes in time, you have to wait for another spawn of a high priority target and then take them out and get the mote. So you're not at a complete loss, you just lose a little bit of time. No need to be super conservative with your super if you get critical. It takes more time to drop a healing rift and more time to recover your health from a healing rift than it does to just pop a well when you really need it. So, and like I said, you get those rally banners before each major encounter, so that's not a big deal. And then my super regen is really good, obviously, because like I said, I'm running Font of Wisdom and Ashes to Assets. So these 2 barriers here are actually pretty tricky. I was hoping that if I just peek one, because there's 2, if I just peek one, the other one won't see me. But of course, there he comes around the corner, and then I almost grenade myself. But they will push up to this bridge, which I've learned from previous runs, so I was hoping that they wouldn't both jump over at the same time. I haven't seen them do that. But yeah, so just one came over, which was perfect. But yeah, it can be quite tricky to take these guys out, because you don't want to sit in the middle of the bridge because they can knock you off. And there's no cover on that bridge. This is pretty much your only piece of cover. There might be a high spot where you can jump to, like a ledge somewhere, and do damage. I haven't really explored. I don't know if you can get auto-loading holster with this scout rifle, but I just find like on Tears of Contrition I have auto-loading, and I find for the flow of the fight and taking out champions, auto-loading holster is like a top tier perk. Because whenever you're stuck reloading while you're dealing with champions, that's just giving them time to recover their health. At least overloads and barriers. So there's a couple moths here. You can just run straight past them, but if, like I said, if you get hit by 2 at the same time, you're dead. So, or if one gets you half health and then you get another one comes out of nowhere. So it's just safer to take them out. So now you're going to get a bunch of ads that come out of the doors on the left side of the room, right over here. I think they come out of all 4 doors there. Once you take out this wave, then there's going to be an unstoppable that spawns up the staircase. So I try to make sure here that I've got all my weapons reloaded. I make sure I hold on to my Celestial Fire, and then I can just kind of charge straight up there and drop a well, stun them, take them out. I was considering doing a Sun Bracers run, but I was kind of being not lazy, but I had already had this loadout all configured on my Warlock because I was doing some raids at King's Fall last night, so I already had my well build ready to go, and to switch to Sun Bracers I would have had to switch up my armor and all that stuff, so it could be a pain, especially when the game doesn't have any streamlined way of swapping loadouts. And it's not like you can remember what piece of armor goes with what. Like, because my Sun Bracers obviously don't go with all the same armor that my Starfire Protocol does, and I might want to mix up my stats. Like, when I'm using Sun Bracers, I want high strength, so that I can proc Sun Bracers. But also, I didn't want to go for Sun Bracers in the end, because the last time I tried using them, which was on a Light Blade actually, there's a bug with Sun Bracers, and I've tested it thoroughly. Like, sometimes it just won't proc. So it's supposed to be that when you get a charged melee kill, you get Sun Bracers ready on the left side of your screen, and then you got like 5 seconds to start your chain of solar grenade spam. And then, so if you start spamming nades within that 5-second window, then you're able to throw 5 solar grenades back to back. And then with the touch of flame aspect that Warlock gets, which is like how Titan has Touch of Thunder on Arc, Warlock has Touch of Flame on Solar, but their solar grenades are crazy, like blobs of lava everywhere. They last longer, and then with Sun Bracers, I think solar grenades last even longer, but you also get intrinsic fastball. So you can get your grenades to their destination quicker and more easily. But yeah, it just doesn't always work. It's like 50% of the time, charged melee kill is not going to get you Sun Bracers ready. I've tested it with getting enemies weak first and then outright killing them with Celestial Fire. I've tested it just from the Scorch damage, if they die just to the Scorch damage. Several different ways, and yeah, it's just not consistent at all, which can completely mess up your combat style, like what you're trying to do with your run. And if I'm trying to do like a solo flawless master run, and I'm counting on Sun Bracers for certain situations, well, then I end up wasting my Celestial Fire, and then I'm stuck with nothing. I got no grenade, no melee, and then I'm just stuck running around waiting for my melee to come back, and then I just hope that the next one's gonna work. But by that time, it's usually too late anyway. So like, what's the point? So it doesn't make for fluent style of gameplay, which is unfortunate. I wish they would fix it. This has been talked about too at length, like I've seen on Reddit discussions and stuff. A lot of people have noticed this with Sun Bracers. But so here we are at the boss room, and this is our first experience with a light bearer. These guys are super deadly if like they hit you with when they pop their super, this guy glows purple, and he'll start tossing like sentinel shields at you. And if one hits you, it'll almost kill you. Like on Light Blade on Grandmaster, one, like if you get hit, you're dead. Also, when they're not in their super mode, they're throwing suppressor grenades, and if they like hit you outright with a suppressor grenade, that can kill you too. So the trick is to just either wait out their super, or just be vigilant of where their shield throws are going. Make sure you're not like surrounded by walls that it can bounce off of, and it's fairly easy to dodge them. But so here, just with kind of experimenting with Ashes to Assets and Font of Wisdom, I figured I can use my Well of Radiance for this first wave, and then I'll have it back for the last wave. Because the thing with this section is, kind of like the last section, you've got 3 high priority targets. Once that light bearer is out of the way, of course. The first one, and they come in waves, and they drop a moat or a tribute, which you bring back to the plate, and then it starts the next wave. So the first wave is a barrier champion. The next wave is a wizard, solar shield wizard, and the last wave is a unstoppable ogre. And I wanted to, and you get a lot of, like, if you don't kill all the ads in the previous phase, like, they'll be left over for the next phase. So it's probably a good idea to take out the ads before you trigger the next phase. But make sure you pick up that tribute, because like I said, I'm not sure if they despawn in this section, but they do despawn in the last one, so I'd imagine they also despawn in this one, which can mean that you'll just get another high priority target that spawns if you don't get it in time. But it might be a good idea, is what I was going to say, is to take out the ads before you start the next section. So like, I got my well back for the unstoppable, like in less than 2 minutes, which is pretty good. And on the previous run, the unstoppable actually killed me. Why? Because I used my I was able to stun him, but I didn't have my weapons reloaded, so I kind of like faltered on that, and then he was unstunned and killed me. But anyway, that's the run, so I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Have a good one.